You're watching Daily Roundup by People's Dispatch, where we bring you some of the top stories from around the world. Let's take a look at the headlines. France gripped by nationwide protests against inflation, low wages. UN urges end to Israeli occupation. UNICEF warns of large-scale child deaths in Somalia. Union denounces threats as Amazon warehouse rejects unionization. Trade unions across various different sectors in France began a massive nationwide strike on Tuesday, October 18. Hundreds of thousands of striking protesters staged demonstrations demanding higher wages in the face of an ever-increasing inflation and a growing energy crisis, a long-standing demand of workers. The protests were organized by the CGT union in tandem with the other unions and numerous leftist civil society organizations. According to the CGT union, around 300,000 protesters took part in the strike along with the marches and demonstrations, contrary to the government's claim of 107,000. In the French capital, Paris, the demonstrations saw the participation of around 70,000 protesters. The protesters had planned close to 150 gathering points to stage the protests, according to the organizers. Reports noted that during the demonstrations, clashes broke out between the protesters and the police. 11 protesters were later arrested in Paris, with 4 others arrested in other parts of the country. Several other cities in the country witnessed a similar protest and demonstrations. The strike and protest yesterday follow in the footsteps of a massive strike by fuel depot workers that is currently underway for the last 3 weeks. The fuel depot workers' strike at 2 French companies, Total Energies and ExxonMobil, has led to fuel production being reduced by more than 60% and petrol pumps across the country reporting shortages. Additionally, workers at the CGT union on Tuesday voted to extend their strike to its 4th week until their demand of a 10% wage hike is not met. Yesterday's multi-sector strike and protests consisted for the large part of workers from the education and transport sectors. The strike resulted in severe traffic disruptions throughout the day. Regional traffic was down by half and suburban train and bus services were affected as well. The transcontinental Eurostar train was forced to cancel some journeys between London and Paris. In terms of the education sector, the government reported that the number of striking teachers and other employees rose from 5.67% to 22.94%. Dozens of high schools reportedly faced disruptions as a result. Other sectors that saw disruption include the state civil service and the municipal cleaning sector. Furthermore, strikes are being staged at 10 nuclear plants in the country, according to the union representing the workers. United Nations Special Rapporteur for Human Rights in the occupied Palestinian territories, Francesca Albanese, in a report made public on Tuesday, October 18, claimed that it is essential to dismantle Israel's settlement, colonial occupation and its apartheid practices, to realize the inalienable right to self-determination of Palestinian people. Albanese claims that Israeli actions against Palestinians in the occupied territories amounts to persecution and collective punishment, with a clear attempt to erase the Palestinian identity there. She claimed that this Israeli apartheid has been emboldened in the last 55 years due to acquiescence of the international community and failure to hold Israel accountable for its actions. The report notes that the greatest human rights suffering is that of nearly 40% of Palestinians who are refugees or descendants of the refugees forced to flee their homes during the creation of Israel in 1948. Even 55 years after 1967, they are still forced to suffer the occupation on a daily basis without any prospects of returning to their ancestral homes. The report dated September 21, 2022 was released for the public on Tuesday. Ms. Albanese noted that the Israeli state denied her a visit to the occupied territories and its representatives to the UN also refused to meet her during the preparation of the report. She underlined that Israel's non-cooperation with the UN on matters of human rights is a serious concern. She pointed out that since 1967, the human rights situation in the occupied Palestinian territory has been steadily deteriorating, primarily as a result of gross violations of international law, including racial segregation and subjugation by the occupying power, Israel. The report highlights the Israeli attempts to stamp out Palestinian collective identity by brutally cracking down on all attempts to resist its oppressive policies. She points out that the May 13, 2022 attack on the funeral procession of journalist Shireen Abu Akleh as one of the examples of such attempts. Furthermore, the report lists the growing number of cases of administrative detention, whereby a large number of activists are put behind bars without charge or trial for years in Israeli prisons. Closing of the offices of 7 Palestinian human rights groups earlier this year, administrative detention of activist Saleh Hamouri, and arrest of large number of Palestinian children are some of the examples cited in the report about Israel's attempts to persecute and repress Palestinians. The report notes that Israel arrests anywhere between 500 to 700 minors and children every year, with over 4,500 Palestinians languishing in Israeli jails at the moment. Additionally, the report criticized the decision of some of the countries in the Arab region to normalize relations with Israel, noting that all attempts to negotiate peace with Israel will be ineffective until they focus on Palestinian human rights and their right to self-determination. It calls on Israel to respect international law and end its military occupation, besides urging the international community to put pressure on Israel for the same. Moving on to the third story, the United Nations Children Organization UNICEF warned on October 18 Tuesday that Somalia could be staring down child deaths on a scale never seen before in the absence of greater humanitarian action and funding from the international community. It said, if not timely prevented, the situation could get worse than the devastation of famine of 2011, in which 260,000 people died in the East African country. The organization sounded the alarm on the massive deficit of international humanitarian funding that is needed in the country to meet the humanitarian and economic needs of the people, especially children suffering from malnutrition, starvation, and disease. It said that its 3-year appeal for humanitarian aid to help families and communities in the rebuilding process after years of war, conflict, and natural disaster, such as drought, has currently only received 3% of its required funds. Even with the problem of underfunding, UNICEF this year has already treated more than 300,000 children for severe acute malnutrition and provided emergency water supplies to 500,000 people in just the last 3 months. According to the latest statistics provided at a press briefing by the UNICEF spokesperson James Elder, 44,000 Somali children were admitted to a hospital for a health facility for suffering from severe acute malnutrition. This converts to one Somali child suffering from the condition being admitted every single minute of every single day. He further noted that the statistics were only based on children who managed to reach the health facility for treatment, and that there are likely thousands of children living in regions still gripped by conflict and terrorism who are deprived of the required medical attention and the treatment. He said the children suffering from severe malnutrition are 11 times more prone to die from diarrhea and measles than healthy, well-nourished children, and the country rates point towards an impending humanitarian disaster not seen in decades. And finally, workers at the Amazon facility in the United States on Tuesday, October 18, voted to reject being represented by the Amazon Labor Union. Among the 950 workers who were eligible to vote at the warehouse in Albany, New York, also known as ALB1, 206 voted in the favor of unionization, while 406 voted against being unionized. Following the vote, the president of the Amazon Labor Union, Chris Smalls, released a statement slamming the election as a sham. He said that the election wasn't free or fair and noted that workers were subjected to intimidation and retaliation on a daily basis. He further added that even the workers who volunteered to be election observers were faced with threats of termination. Additionally, he vowed to keep fighting to expand and continue the ALU's campaign calling for fair treatment of all Amazon workers, saying that this won't be the end of ALU at ALB1. Reports noted that ALU lawyers have already filed 27 unfair labor practice charges against the company with the National Labor Relations Board (NLRB). The ALU had made headlines recently with its successful attempt in April this year to unionize workers at the Amazon warehouse, also known as the JFK 8, in New York State's Island. The win was notable since the warehouse employed more than 8,300 workers. Reports noted that Amazon is still trying to reverse ALU's victory by appealing against the vote with the NLRB. It has, however, suffered subsequent losses at other warehouses, with the loss on Tuesday being its second. It had lost a vote in May by a very close margin at another warehouse in Staten Island. A number of other unionizing attempts at Amazon facilities elsewhere in the country in the last year have proved unsuccessful. However, more unionization attempts are being made, with workers at an Amazon warehouse in California filing a petition to hold a vote to join the ALU. Workers at facilities in California, Illinois, and Georgia have recently staged walkouts to bring the company's attention to their issues and concerns related to working conditions. Similar concerns around high injury rates, extremely fast-paced work, and employee burnouts were raised by ALB1 organizers in the days leading up to the vote yesterday. Workers who support and voted in the favor of unionizing had additionally hoped that being part of a union would help them negotiate higher wages from the company in the face of steadily rising living costs. And that's all for today's episode. For more such stories, visit our website peoplesdispatch.org and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.